Hello and welcome. Merv's Cafe on the Saturday afternoon. My name is Jay Midas, and I'm with my close friend Rob, I guess.
I guess we're taking things literally today.
A little bit, man. So today I get to put the J away a little bit. I get to be John with you. I mean, I have a long history with my friends here, and I think I'll go into it briefly. Where we've are college mates. We've been close friends for a long time. We've often got a chance to work together in the capacity from whether it be sharing ideas in the educational field to being creative partners and friends, being able to help each other out in moments notice. And Rob has always been such a great creative mind. And also, sometimes you need a person to tell you this is working, this needs to change. Always a person who helps me ideate. So it's a pleasure to get a chance to chat with you. As I said, we're super comfortable with this format. We've been podcasting together for a while now. So today I get a chance to ask you some questions and also talk a little bit about a project that we have in the books for maybe later on this year called PidgeBlack and the Firebreathing Dragonfly. So first, Robbie, I want to ask you how you feeling today.
Good. Can't complain. Again, as I said before, I didn't die on the way here, so something positive.
That's always a good thing. I mean, maintaining life is
kind
of the goal, I guess. I want to ask you. So when I first brought up the idea of PidgeBlack and the fire-breathing dragonfly, like, what was your first impression, and what did you necessarily think about the idea, and did you think at the moment if it had traction or legs?
I didn't think much of it just because it was a broad statement. It was just, I want to try to write something. And then when you said it was more geared towards comic book style, I was like, you got me a graphic novel. That's like my go-to. That's my niche. So I was open-minded and was willing to see where it went.
So you've given an idea to what I had as a very basic outline for something that was, hey, I want to have two juxtaposing characters. This PidgeBlack, which is supposed to be a symbol of hope and optimism, and then you also have its opposite, the fire breathing dragonfly, where I think after you giving me some context, I think the word that came to mind is I think I want this character to be somewhat corrosive. When coming up with any idea, like when it comes to comic writing or any type of storytelling, like what do you think are like the super necessary components that we would need to implement or add to make it compelling?
What I always loved about writing and just literature, film, whatever, that medium telling a story is having a hero that might not always have their hands clean. I think having a truly good protagonist is kind of boring. If we use, for example, Superman, I cannot stand him as a character because like he's too good. Plus his powers make him like indestructible. Like you can't kill him. So like trying to make these feats of like sacrifice almost non-existent because he's never truly in danger. So when trying to come up with the characters that you presented, the first one was like Leon. You just said, I want this character. And I was like, well, let's give him like a sad backstory. We always root for that and kind of reflect with it. Similarly to like Spider-Man, where we all kind of root for him because we can see ourselves in him. And with the Leon character, it was the same thing where it's just like he had something that affected him greatly. And now he's trying to better it, whether through the right means or the wrong means. He's trying to get something done. And I feel like we as humans, we similarly have that same thought process of, I got to get crap done. Sometimes I got to get my hands dirty to do it. And that's where we kind of lead with that as the main character.
Is there any quintessential like main character to you that you can go to and say this is, I guess aside from the Spider-Man character, right? Because I think you said it right. There is a sense of relatability, and he does have this popular vibe, whether it's Peter Parker or Miles Morales. Like there is that connection piece. But aside from Spider-Man, I know there's several options here, but like, who would you say would be like a number two or an alternative to that?
Of relatability?
Relatability, or even more so like that, like a good, solid, like enriching like character, like protagonist.
Oddly enough, like I'm a huge fantasy fan. Tolkien's Frodo Baggins. This is a simple, like everyday Joe Schmo that all the hobbits love to do is eat and party. and then he gets thrown into this like vast world much bigger than himself because of something his uncle had done over 100 years prior. And just seeing that plight where we're in this big world and sometimes we don't think we'll fit those shoes, but then you have to step up and do those things. And that's why so many fantasy novels and films are now based deeply on Tolkien's writing styles. Mm-hmm. If we look at Game of Thrones, similarly, it's the same thing, where we have some characters that might seem small, but then this big world trying to make an even bigger difference.
I think as we get into the realm of fantasy and traditional storytelling and book writing, I want to ask you about one of your favorites. I want to ask you about Peter Pan.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would say, in terms of some of their favorite either literature or stories, I think they would overlook this particular tale. So I've always been intrigued by your perspective of it, and if you could like give a synopsis of like your overall viewpoint of the story and like what makes Peter Pan and Captain Hook so enriching. Because as I said, it was one of those things that
with Peter Pan, when I watched it as a kid, I was like, wow, this is really whimsical. I like it. And then when I found the book, I read it and I was like, wow, this is equally as enjoyable. And then fast forward a decade, I'm in college, and one of my professors says you have to do a translation and adaptation where you basically compare a book to maybe its film adaptations and other forms of it. And I reread the story and I came to realize like the hero Peter is a bit of a dick. That when you see Hook, a lot of the reasons why he's so angsty and miserable towards Peter is solely because he's so good at what he does without having to try.
Right.
And I relate it to my brother, where it's just like he always had to like apply himself in school and always had to do X, Y, and Z to be better. And not to make myself sound cocky, but some things I always felt were easier for me.
Right.
And we would relate like that. And there was one evening where my brother, like we were at the bar or whatever, and he was just like, dude, I hate you because you made it so easy. And I thought about that interaction between Peter and James Hook, because literally Hook's last lines before he died in the book was, show me your form, which was like a fighting technique where he was just very sloppy, but he was able to get the job done.
Yep.
And then fast forward, I read it again 10 years after that. And I started to just notice the subtle nuances of like the TikTok croc, where it would follow everywhere. And it just showed how life is looming. For Peter, he was always just so lively and sprightly. He was the boy that never grew up. But for everybody else, like we aged, we grew out of it. Yeah. So I just got to see different levels of it. And I think that's something we can appreciate with most literature. Yeah. If it's got multi-levels to it, when you read it at a different stage in your life, how you get to appreciate it in a different light.
Yeah, and ever since I've heard your perspective on it, I've never looked at that story the same way again. Like it's something that you decide that it's special to, because as I said, it's something that, you know, when you look at the more popular or the more like, you know, contemporary version of Peter Pan, you see like, you know, it's just, you know, quintessential good guy versus quintessential bad guy, and there's obviously elements of this narrative that's going on. But yeah, once it's explained, where it's like there's a difference between like polished skill and natural talent, and when the two collide, it's, you know, you can see benefits of both, but you also see something gained, something lost.
Yeah, in a lot of the modern iterations of J.M. Barrie's tale, they always hyperfixate on the fact that Peter used to kidnap kids to make them the Lost Boys. So in most of these stories, they always just make him like the anti-hero or the antagonist. Mm. And they always try to show how James Hook was the one that was wrong. So even as times change, like the story evolves and you get to see more levels to it and how people interpret that exact story through their own life experiences. So I always thought it was a great story.
I believe we're in a time where, you know, I think we all need to be uplifted in some way. Is there anything that uplifts you? And if you have any advice for anybody who's looking to feel that way, what advice would you give?
Honestly, just find your thing that you find solace in and comfort, and just dive into it. Like mine was always writing. And for a while, I lost my muse. I was just too preoccupied with life. And I've tried to go back into it. And I realized like I'll get lost for hours just typing, doodling, just like getting my ideas out. And even if it doesn't come to fruition in like a finalized, polished piece, it was the fact that I got to do it. So whether it's music, like exercising, for whatever you're into, just pursue it. Try to make a little time out in your day to do it. Because I know even with you, like you always were into writing the poetry, and then like it felt like it got put on the back burner. And then in recent years, you came back, and you just have a different, I guess, aura to you. Like sound like a Gen Zer right now using these words. Your vibe, your aura.
The child took away all my aura the other day. They were like, "Oh, I'm like," but I told them I had unlimited aura, so it was okay. But they said that they took that too, so I'm gonna grab it back on Monday. Don't
Gotcha.
no big deal. I'm glad that you were also staying connected with writing. Is there anything that you're working on right now?
Honestly, I've been jotting down ideas of something that I wrote when I was like 15.
Yeah.
For context, I used to play like a card game called Magic the Gathering.
Let's go.
And it was just all fantasy based. And I used to work for a card shop, and I used to do a lot of the stuff online. And there was one section just for like fantasy writing called the Realm.
Yep.
So like a lot of the characters are based off of like that one thing called the Realm.
Yep.
And it's supposed to be like your typical Tolkien-esque, like we start off in one place and then we end up fighting the big bad and everybody's happy, but each character's kind of got like a muddied background, but they all come together for one cohesive end goal. Again, if it happens, it happens. If it finishes, it finishes.
I look forward to reading it when you have
Yeah.
when you have it set. That sounds pretty amazing. The last thing I have for you is I asked you at the beginning to give me anything you would like me to recite for you today or expand upon today.
This was one. I don't know if it was just like you writing notes for your everyday life, if it was poetry based.
Okay.
But I read it and it reminded me of a quote from the band Gym Class Heroes.
Yeah.
Travis McCoy said in the song Right, Right On, making a mess as I progress, don't cry about it, do better. Right, right on. And I read this and it felt just very reminiscent of it.
So I shall read it out loud. The screw ups that you do are so incredibly amazing that I'm enamored at your ability to gain so much when all around you is lost. Oof.
Yeah, like
okay.
It takes that weird flip of, things are screwed up, but you can find a little like silver lining in the crappiness.
Yeah, and I think, listen, there's been no shortage of crappy situations that I'm pretty sure that we've experienced in our own lives within the past several years for a myriad of reasons. So, there's no time like now to create positivity and to create just wellness for oneself and self-worth and wealth. So, I'm learning that. And as I said, I think, I see the value in people. I see the value in time. And I think obviously this time was very valuable. Getting a chance to chat with you. As I said, I always feel like I'm learning in every conversation. But Robbie, I think that holds true like 10 times over when I'm getting a chance to sit down with you and just being always enthralled with something new that you always bring to the table. So as I said, thank you always for your time. Thank you for pulling up and coming down to perform with me here today. And I said thank you, and I appreciate. Not only do I appreciate it, I'm actually looking forward. I'm looking forward to the next stage where we get a chance to update you on PidgeBlack and the Firebreathing Dragonfly.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's set a challenge right here. Let's have one issue done by, when do you think?
Well, right now I'm working on the epilogue, so define issue. Like, are we just talking the backstory? Like,
you want to have like maybe a sampler story, like maybe first 10 pages, 5 pages?
Okay, maybe 5. Maybe 5, because again, writing and art and all that stuff, like as much as I cannot stand the use of AI, I've been using it as just like a template to get my thoughts out before it's drawn over. But 5 seems like a reachable goal. So then, small attainable stuff.
So I was gonna say, so then maybe we could do like a 3 to 5 page issue per issue. So maybe we can do something small and truncated. Yeah. All right. So look forward to that. As I said, as we get closer, it's gonna evolve. But I'm looking forward to PidgeBlack, Firebreathing, Dragonfly. Robbie, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.